Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome. You guys are all in the right place. If you're here for the WBL Institute session titled Readiness to Launch, we are still welcoming folks into the room, but I'm going to go ahead and pass the baton over to my colleague Larry Williams to continue to usher us into today's session.
Thank you, Takia. Welcome, everyone, and happy Wednesday. It's March 9th, 4 p.m. to the WBL Institute Readiness to Launch Part 2. And if you see this on your screen, then you're in the right place. So I'm not going to, we all know that we're in the right place. There is a Q code on the bottom of the screen on the first few pages that you can use. That is to download the exit survey, which we encourage everyone to please fill out at the end of this session. Um, but if you can, if you have your cell phone, please just take a quick picture of it now so that you'll have it at the end of by the end of this session.
Larry, someone's saying your volume is a little bit low. Do you mind turning it up?
Can you hear me now?
Much better.
Much better. Cool. So presenters for today is myself, Larry Williams, Desmond Jardin, Joe Pinto, and Takia Weeks. Once again, if you didn't hear me from the last screen, the Q code on the bottom right of the screen, you can use your camera to take a snapshot of that, and that is the exit survey ticket. Meeting norms for today. We'll all participate to make this session most useful for everyone. We commit to being present during the session and during the breakouts. We encourage you to speak up live and or engage in the chat. And once again, to complete the exit survey before you leave. As a part of today's content, we are going to have a refresher on what we went over last month in our Readiness to Launch Part 1. Also, new resources, steps to summer program readiness. We will also have a panel discussion, working together to make it happen. And then we'll wrap up with announcements and final thoughts, resources, and the exit ticket. And I'm going to pass it back to my colleague, Takia.
Well, I think I'm
Actually, to
taking
Desmond,
this.
I'm sorry.
It's all good, Larry. Appreciate
Sorry
you.
about that.
No, it's all good, man. So, as Larry said, what we wanted to do first is kind of just do a really quick recap of what we presented to you guys on February 9th in terms of, readiness to launch part one. And that's really just to discuss the major bucket programs that are coming up for the summer. Next slide, please. So those programs, the biggest, the big barracuda is Career Ready SYEP. Again, the deadline for application for that is 4/22/22. 20,000 students, right? So again, a lot of students, a lot of bodies, a lot of information that we need to get through for that from ages 14 to 21. Again, the program is going to be from July 5th through 11th, and it's going to be $15 per hour. For the younger students, I believe it is stipended. Older students is 15 per hour. The other major program, again, well, in terms of SYEP especially, is the ISP SYEP program. That one is going to be actually 1,000 students. And yeah, 1,000 students ages 16 through 21. That also has an application deadline of the 22nd of April, unless that gets extended. But we just wanted to make sure that you guys know similar dates, July 11th to the 19th. And as we stated, this program has the stipend for the younger youth, while the older youth we're still trying to figure out what the payment is going to look like for them. The next two programs are more DOE internal, being the ISP program, which we've done every summer, 1,000 students. The deadline is still being decided, but we will have similar program dates to the ISP SYEP summer, and similar pay scale, $15 per hour. And then finally, the summer enrichment program, which I think we piloted for the first time last year. We're looking to get approximately 1,000 students, a bit more, close to 1,100. And again, we're targeting rising juniors and seniors for this program. Similar dates of operation, the 6th of July through the August 19th. This program is strictly stipended, $500 for the summer, right? So again, these are not the only programs happening this summer. There are some other one-offs, but these are the major bucket programs that we want to make sure that we are prepared for as we move into the summer. Next slide, please. And what we want to do now is actually just kind of go through. My partners, Takia and Joe, are going to tell you a little bit more about how we're going to help you get through to this summer. Takia?
Thanks so much, Desmond. Appreciate you setting the context. And for those of you who are here for the first time, we were able to go into a little bit more detail about those 4 summer programs last week, or last month, I should say. And we're going to continue to provide supports as the weeks go on, knowing that most of you guys are just now kind of getting yourselves organized, starting to put your planning teams together, starting to think about, recruitment and targeting the right students, et cetera, et cetera. So there's so much swirling, so much that you are trying to think about to make this a successful summer. So we just appreciate you guys being here and allowing us to support you every step of the way. And so one of the things that our team has done with the help of everybody involved, but Joe specifically, is to be able to really provide some steps week by week for you to use, not in a prescriptive manner, but in a way that hopefully is going to guide you as to how best to ramp up with all of the different stakeholders involved to make this as easy as possible. And so as we move to the next slide, Joe and I are going to play tag team and kind of getting us through exactly what it is we're going to be providing, and hopefully getting your feedback as part of this process as well. So I'll hand it over to Joe for this part.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Takia. So as Takia said, we tried really hard to think about a way to be supportive in a kind of a, sort of a stepwise way, right? How can we walk with you, right? How can we be companions on the journey without being overly intrusive in your process, but without taking our hands off and saying, it's on you for these next 9 weeks, and we'll see you at the end of the spring. And by that point, you'll have, as many students in these programs as you've been able to get into them. And we just didn't want that to happen. We wanted to be with you in time, over time, to help you with what might arise, and to make sure that, things that we know just from all of this time we've spent, in the weeds with these programs, things we know will come up when they come up are in front of you as well. So basically what we'll be doing is every Friday for the next 9 weeks, or it's actually going to be 10 weeks, because we're taking spring break off, every Friday we'll send you a kind of a chunked set of suggested, not required, not mandatory, suggested to-dos. These are the things that you might want to be focusing on for this week in the longer picture of getting students ready and getting your school ready for these programs. A new one will arrive every Friday, and at the end, and they will build, each one will build on the last one, right? So that we're not sending 9 weeks worth of to-dos in a way that would surely be overwhelming. Can we have the next slide, please? Thanks. And the reason we're doing it this way is because we know that summer program planning is a pretty long and laborious process, and it can be to try to think right now at the outset of everything that's going to be entailed in the journey is a lot. So, the idea behind this resource is that we're going to try our best to kind of chunk the labor into these like very manageable weekly to-dos, and send them to you in those chunks. And then anything that comes up for you in the course of that, any difficulties, any questions, any concerns or challenges you can bring up in the course of coaching. And yeah, so this is, hopefully this will ensure that folks don't fall behind too much, and that individual tasks related to the longer term of this thing don't fall through the cracks. So let's take a little look. I'll pass it over again to Takia, and we'll take a look at what this is actually going to look like. What week 1, for example, is going to look like when it goes out to you this Friday.
Thanks so much, Joe. And so moving to the next slide. This is a sneak preview of one of the to-do lists that the team was able to draft that hopefully hits multiple buckets for you and areas that you should really be thinking about when you start to plan this process. We want to stress that this is not a one-person role. We want to make sure that folks are putting teams together because this work is definitely going to require all hands on deck. We understand that not always the person who is starting the planning is the person who will be around over the summer. And, we want to make sure that as you start to put your teams together, inclusive of your CBOs and your families and others who are on the school level, that you guys are making sure that everybody is able to be included in the process. So the way these are divided up, we have a couple different sections. The first one is at your desk. And so if you are a WBL coordinator or someone who's taking on the lion's share of the work in the initial stages, we have some things for you to start to think about and check off in the earlies. So for example, in week 1, thinking about reviewing the program eligibility requirements for all of these programs and what they're actually looking for, and thinking that through in terms of the students that you have and those that you might be targeting for these. Also reviewing CTS, which is our CTE tracking system, and making sure that the data on the students' hours and their participation is already kind of up to date. We want to make sure students have profiles created because that is what we will be using to attach these hours to once they have started to complete some of these hours in the summer. We also want to make sure that you have preliminary lists of students that you want to approach, and also a way that you're going to be thinking of doing that to start to drum up the interest and to make sure that students know the differences between the programs as well. And then thinking about setting up a time or a system for collecting employment paperwork. We know that the verification documents for not just SYP, but for also ISP can feel daunting sometimes for students and for staff. So just making sure that you guys have a really good idea of what will need to be requested and a good system for how students can bring those in, how you can make a copy or have a repository for those things, and then making sure that those can get to your CBOs or your employer partners as well. And then thinking about work with your CBO, find out who your partner is. Hopefully there's already one person designated to your school who's reached out to you. If that's not the case, then definitely taking the time to do some investigative work will be really helpful. You need to potentially recruit somebody if you're doing a session that maybe is something that you're creating yourself. If you're building your own program and you're not necessarily having attached a CBO already to your school, then maybe that's something that we can support you on, is trying to figure out who's the best partner and what's the best way to get them on board. Then things to do with your students and their parents, spending time with them, making sure that you know what their strengths are, pulling them out of the hallways and talking to them about the programming to gauge their interest is going to be really, really critical. Thinking about how to advertise these programs, whether they be orientations or presentations, whether CBOs are going to be pushing in, whether you're going to have students, logging into a Zoom presentation. All of those things are really important for you to start thinking through. And then in terms of how you make the announcement around deadlines, so that people are not scrambling at the end trying to push documents in your face or to sign off on something when the date has already gone by, is going to be really important as well. And then finally, things you can do with your colleagues, making a presentation to the folks at your school level to make sure that they understand what the ask is, and that this is not work that you should be doing by yourself. Asking for input on the students who they would recommend, because obviously you don't know all of the students at your school potentially, but getting a sense of who's coming on time, who has been a student that maybe needs to step up, who really could use an opportunity. Those are the types of conversations that would be great to have. And scheduling a few in-class presentations about these program offerings would really be helpful as well. And then on the far right of the document, we have, if you're building your own program, so it's none of these 4 that we talked about, but maybe you're still trying to utilize SIF funds and you want to create a workplace challenge or something else. These are going to be some steps that you can take for an offshoot program that would be your own, maybe because you want to put something together with a partner that you just met. So again, finding out more about the industry partners that will host interns this summer, asking them, to tell you how many they might need and for how long, and then really trying to be, intentional about discussing what the duties will be and what that job description could potentially look like. So these are some of the things you can start to do in week 1, and this document will go out at the end of this week, so that everyone here and all those who were not able to make it, but might be potentially participating in these programs, will have access. So you will get these supports every week, and if you want to delete them, that's fine. If you want to forward and share, we would love you to do that. But we're going to continue to send these for about 10 weeks straight to help get you in the rhythm of of the planning. And I will pass it back over to Joe as we move to the next slide.
Yeah, so before we're going to talk a little bit. Okay, I just want to make sure, did we want to do any discussion around that sample or no? Because I saw, Larry, that you skipped on past that slide.
Yeah, can you go back? Yeah.
Okay, I wasn't sure if we were including that or for the sake of time for the panel, if we were moving past it, but maybe we'll just take a very brief amount of time for this, especially since Takia, you did such a great job of walking us actually through what the components are here. We don't necessarily need to dwell on the components, but just if folks want to take a second, unmute or tell us in the chat, what do you see here that you think is going to be helpful to you, whether it's something about the structure of this resource or the content of this resource? What's standing out as something that, you see this on a Friday, come into your email, you'll be able to seize upon it and be like, all right, this is for me.
Right. Just a comment here, right? I realize we have 4 separate programs, right? I believe to make, we're sending the kids to about 3 different sites or links for registration. I think if this could be implemented in CTS, right, where the links can be provided in CTS so that the students do one login and they connect through that, then that would be helpful than to be sent.
Oh, I think we're losing you.
I'm sorry, Rohan. I don't know if you can repeat what you said. We lost you at that last suggestion.
Oh, so what I'm saying that we should be able to place links and see so that the one have access to all of those links for the various programs that are on.
Got it.
Descriptions there as well.
You're breaking up, but what I'm hearing you say is that you think it would be good to have the various links in CTS so students can go straight there as opposed to having to jump around for the different programs they want to apply to. Is that correct? Uh-oh, we might have lost him. Does anyone else want to pipe up as well?
Yeah, and I should say I'm noticing that there have been various questions in the chat specifically around the programs themselves. So hopefully as we move into the panel, we'll have time to really give those questions their due attention, because I would hate for folks to feel like those questions aren't being answered. But with respect to this particular resource, before we move on, are there any other things that folks want to point out, top of mind, things that you notice, things that stand out?
So I did get a quick edit where we have WSEP. It's really now just called an employability profile, no longer EP. But that's a quick edit. That's not super content. But yeah.
Yeah, and to Takia's point, I think it's we really wanted to be intentional about including this information for the 4 programs we talked about, and then this very explicit sidebar about folks who are working with their industry partners to design their own programs, because we know that's a really important piece of this work, and it may not get its due when we're talking about these 4 centrally developed programs. So we want to make sure folks have support in doing that work as well. We can go to the next slide as we move toward the. I'm sorry, did somebody say something? Is Rohan back?
Yeah, sorry, I was on the LIRR. I'm
Okay.
on the LIRR. Sorry.
No worries.
Right.
And was your point was addressed, or is there anything else you wanted to bring up?
Yes, it was understood. No, it was
Okay.
understood. Thank you.
Sure thing. Okay, so what does this leave out? I think it's important to talk about what's not here, right? I think there are going to be steps that are specific to your school's approach, things you've been doing, year after year, things that you developed last year in response if you participated in some of these programs for the first time, things that you developed as part of your just kind of the fabric of your school and what you do and how you prep for these things. Those things that are just kind of in your school's voice, your style, your special touch, we can't know those things. We don't want to prescribe those things, of course, so those aren't going to be here, nor will the steps within the steps, right? All of these things that you saw on this list, on this sample, include some kind of sub-step, some things that you have to do to make those things happen. to spell those all out would be insanely prescriptive, right? It would be kind of like basically telling you how to turn on your computer and how to, we don't want to do it like you do your thing your way. We just want to make sure that the major steps, right, the basic buckets are covered. And then if there's anything about the implementation of any particular step, any of these steps within the steps that are unclear or challenging, or you need thought partnership for, bring those things to coaching, and we'll talk about them for sure. Next slide, please. So what can you expect? Not to put too fine a point on it, a weekly email that will be short, that will have each to-do list. It will not ask you to do anything in particular, and you can definitely unsubscribe if this kind of stepwise kind of cadenced movement is not feeling helpful to you. You can unsubscribe. And support. We'll be dedicating explicit time in coaching sessions to talk about the week's given work as we move toward program readiness. Next slide, please. All right, I'll pass this over to Takia as we close out this section and move toward our panel. Takia can make this little note about how deadlines fit into this particular resource.
Thanks so much, Joe. And I'll ask Desmond to jump in here as well. We know around 10 weeks from now, we're going to land in early May. And so we felt like this would be a great place to kind of pause on the supports, because it might then switch to, getting ready for students who are graduating, other things that you might be in a frenzy doing at that point in time. But we thought May was a good time to really kind of give you a break and also give you a chance to think and make sure that you can review and really feel ready on the school level for what's coming in July and August. We definitely don't want to be in your hair, but we want to make sure that you can reflect on these to-do lists. Again, you'll get about 10 of them or so, and then hopefully we will be able to continue to field specific questions in the other forums that we have. For example, the coaching sessions, which will continue on weekly, as well as some office hours type supports that we will be providing. So we want to make sure that once we get to May, most everybody feels like they're in a pretty good spot. And then in terms of the application deadlines, I will defer to Desmond, who can talk a little bit about some of the ones that are coming down the pipe.
Right. So, Larry, if you could just hit the next slide, please. To Takia and Joe's point, the reason that we have this set up kind of to, I won't say an aggressive timeline, but a very consistent timeline is actually so that we can also go back, right? So one of the key things about the timeline is that I think to the point, we have multiple programs happening that all kind of require similar document management for the students and similar recruitment management, but the timeline's kind of scattered, right? So the way that we've set this up is that we're primarily driving towards the Career Ready SYP deadline, but the way that it's set up, and you'll see it when you get the documents within a kind of a weekly cadence. We actually have it set up that you can again take time, review, but also circle back to students and see about like a recruitment round 2 or recruitment round 3, so that we're making sure that we're kind of leaving no stone unturned, but we also give ourselves the time to not just recruit the students and say, hey, we need you to do this thing, but really allow them to gather all the pieces to complete the puzzle without creating a massive stretch or creating too many bottlenecks, right? Because we also know that so often in the summer recruitment and onboarding process, it becomes students fall off at the bottlenecks, right? And so it's about preventing those from happening so that we can keep things moving in a continuous, if not just repetitive, well, not repetitive, but yeah, just have cycles, right? 3 short cycles in the next 2 months, so that everybody can kind of get to the start point for June. And with that, we did want to actually hear from the experts and practitioners. So I wanted to pass it off to colleague Larry, who's going to lead us in the next portion of this. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Desmond. So working together to make it happen. So thinking about what is going to help you as you prepare for your summer program launching. And Takia and Joe went over it briefly just in regards to to-dos. As a part of the to-dos is actually communicating with your CBOs. And we've been fortunate enough that we've carved out some time to hold a panel discussion with some of our partnering stakeholders. And I just want to introduce them before I ask them to unmute themselves. First, we have Ms. Adele Hararty, and if I say your name wrong, please don't please feel free to correct me, who is the program coordinator for Grant Associates. We also have Miss Monia Salam, program director of work-based learning with Expand Ed Schools. We have Audrey Mangan, which with the Department of Education, Borough Instructional Specialist, Division of Specialized Instruction and Student Support for Manhattan TCAC. And we have Mr. Narus Salam, who is the Director of Career Ready SYP and Ladders for Leaders, Workforce Connect with DYCD. So first, I'm going to say welcome to everyone. And can you hear me? And are you guys there?
Definitely. Hey, everyone. So my name is Adele Harity. I am a program coordinator with Grant Associates. I also have my colleague, Matt Brito, on the call, who's additionally a program manager. And he also will be kind of talking as well. So yes, we're super happy to be here, excited to talk about IST for the summer.
So just ahead of time, just before we continue, in the order that I called your name. So Adele, Monia, then Audrey, then Narus. I'm just going to ask you guys 3 questions. I'm going to ask you guys if you can, please feel free to unmute yourself to answer those questions, okay? All right, so opening question. What do you want schools to know that would help their students to be successful in their work with you this summer?
So I'll go ahead and take this one. Hello, everyone. My name is Matt Brito. I'll be speaking on behalf of ISP for Grant Associates. So what do we want schools to know that would help their students to be successful in their work with us this summer? We obviously all have a really high goals, but I think some of the key qualities that we want students to have is, of course, to be malleable and teachable. We are in a space where we are working with CTE students who essentially at 14 years old decided what their CTE career was going to be, which could later on down the road lead to opportunities in that field. But that doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to stick to that career path, especially if they're making these choices so young. So for them to be ambitious is great, but for them to be malleable is greater, because then they would likely be more susceptible to the teachings of their industry and find ways to transfer skills from one industry to another, which is, of course, a plus on all ends. So I think that's something we'd like to work on as well.
Thanks for that, Matt.
So hi, I'm Monia Salam. I'm the program director of work-based learning at Expand Ed Schools. I'm going to be supporting this summer predominantly with connecting Career Ready SYEP to credit and WBL hours towards CDOS. I think as I work with schools, I want to talk about like partnership. It's the key to making this summer happen and making sure that you have multiple designated personnel who is really sitting down with those, whatever there's 4 programs that you're going to have at your schools, making sure that there are consistent levels of communication and that you're designating humans to do certain things, because oftentimes we see small things fall through the cracks, like working papers, getting documents ready. So just making sure that each person, whether it's your provider who's creating the service, knows what their responsibilities are, and the school personnel knows what their responsibilities are. That's one of the best ways to make summer successful.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's so nice to be here with our CTE colleagues. I really appreciate the invitation. In the chat, I am going to put information about our summer youth programs that are being run for students with IEPs through the Transition and College Access Centers. We have 400 slots per borough. Our older youth, if you have a site where students are able to work and you would like your students with IEPs to continue working there over the summer, you can let us know and we can connect that site to your school by way of our SYEP program. I'm singing the praises of Mania Salam because she started out this year with our schools talking about getting credit for work-based learning experiences. And she trained Manhattan schools on that process earlier in the year. So letting schools know that they should not let the summer youth experience slip by. They should be creating those classes. They should be using the resources that she has sent out. And we have further pushed out to schools to get the students on this summer schedule so the experience can be memorialized. We, from our perspective, on a borough-wide view, we've seen a decreased level of interest in getting the CDOS and the 4+1 simply because of the COVID waivers. We do know now that the Regents exams are coming back full force for June. That's the latest that I've heard today. And so we really want to have students get those hours counted, documented in their schedules, memorialized on the transcripts. So it just is going to make your life as CTE teachers, providers, that much easier. And we, as the TCAC, want to support you in that. Our older youth, we know for sure that they're going to get paid the $15 an hour for 25 hours per week. So if you're interested, I'll put all my information and our links in the chat just so you have our resources. Thank you.
Thanks, Audrey.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Nur Salam. I'm Director of Career Ready SYP and Ladders for Leaders program at New York City Department of Youth and Community Development. We run the Summer Youth Employment Program, largest youth employment program in the country. As you know, last year we served 75,000 youth through our SYP programming. This year, our goal is even higher. Right, as Mayor Eric Adams announced earlier last month, actually, that we're going to serve over 100,000 youth through SYP programming this summer. 90,000 of them are going to be through New York City Department of Youth and Community Development. 10,000 of the other slots will be filled by DOE and other workforce programming in the city. In terms of what do I want schools to know to be successful this summer? I think earlier panelists mentioned the partnership and the communications is key here, because each for the Career Ready programming, each schools is connected with an SYP providers. It's important that there is a partnership between the school and the provider when it comes to identifying what is the slot allocation is going to be for the school this year through Career Ready programming. Last year, we have made some significant changes in terms of the program model, right? What younger youth experience through SYP, what older youth experience through SYP. Younger youth participates in a high quality project-based learning experience. On the older youth side, they're connected to a work experience. So it's important for the schools to know the program model. And that's where the provider and the school partnerships come into play, because the best way to get students in the program is to make sure they fully know what kind of programming they are going to experience, right? In addition to that, we have made significant changes when it comes to how our students get into our programming. I know earlier Takia mentioned about the documents that we collect. So it's important for schools to know what documents students will need in order to successfully enroll in the program. And we have made significant changes. In the past, DYCD used to require income verification from the students. It's no longer the case this year. So we have a brand new document checklist for the youth. So it's important for the schools to know that we have also made changes in terms of what is acceptable when it comes to a proof of address. We are accepting the transcript as a proof of address this year, because one thing we have tried to do is to make sure that we are not putting too much barrier for youth to enter into SYP programming. In terms of our applications, I know earlier Desmond mentioned the general SYP, the community-based SYP applications went live last week. on Tuesday, March 1st. So if any youth who are interested to participate in general SYP, they can go to applications.nyc, application.nycsyp.com to complete an application. On the career ready side, we actually released the applications last month. So the application has been out for over 3 weeks. Each students, if they attend one of the career ready schools, they're going to need PIN number associated with their providers to complete an application. I'm here to answer any questions you might have about the application process, or in terms of how we can actually make this program experience good for the partnering schools and for our participants as well. So thank you to the CTE team for having me on.
Thank you, Narusa. And I'm going to go over to our next question real quick. What are the major missteps from previous years that you want to caution schools against this year?
All right, Larry, just making sure that will be back to me, correct?
Yes. Oh, Matt, yes. Yes.
Okay, got it.
Same
Thank you. Thank you for that. So yeah, major missteps from previous years to caution schools against. I think this is just a very general caution. There are a lot of competing programs this year. There are a lot of opportunities for our students, and we're going to need to be extremely clear on which opportunities we're suggesting for which students. We don't want to get into a space where we assume or we think we want our students to apply for one opportunity, and then at the very last minute say, hey, this might be more geared towards what they want to do. Maybe we should switch them over to this side. I think especially if you're making recommendations for your students, be very clear in your recommendations, and then consistent so that we can support your student regardless of what program they're in, and just make sure that they're getting in their best foot forward.
Thanks, Matt.
And I agree with Matt. We have students ask us all the time if they can do both, like career ready SYEP and lottery. So it's really important that students understand that, like, here is the program that you're going to be doing this year, and here are the ones that you can double up, but there are some that you can't. I think beyond that, one major misstep is like that I see from a lot of schools is that they put everything in one person's shoulder. And normally it's a work-based learning coordinator. People are like, you have a work-based learning coordinator, everything related to work-based learning is going to go to you. And that just doesn't work. Like, especially last year, we saw so much staff turnover at schools, and we lost a lot of those people. So those connections were lost. So it's really important that schools develop a team, and school admin understands that. It's not just about like the teachers understanding it, it's that principals and APs are walking away with this idea that to make all of this happen, it requires a team of people.
Thank you.
Just to give two perspectives, one from a person who worked as an administrator in a CTE school. If we are letting the work-based learning experience slip through our fingers because we didn't let the programmer know now, every single child who's putting in an application for SYEP, it may behoove all of us if they send an email to the programmer to sign them up for that summer school course that results in the experience being put on the transcript. That might be a great practice to start now. So that's from my perspective as a person who worked in a CTE high school. The perspective I have for schools working in the transition and college access centers as a SYEP vendor for students with IEPs. Thanks again, Mr. Salam, for your work with engaging our young people. We need for families and schools to be aware that documents that they are gathering together, it's great for schools to have a repository of those documents because they can be used again and again for different opportunities that come up. We ask our transition team leaders to create a transition folder for each student. We know that 10% of our students are homeless, and to have documents in one place, if God forbid a family has to run because of a domestic violence situation, it is really comforting to know that these documents are in the school online repository. And that's really helpful for students, for families, and schools do report that students, when they're getting ready to go to college or career, transferring those documents back to the students in a secure email setup is extremely helpful. And those would be the two pieces I hope schools avoid for this summer. Thank you.
Thanks, Audrey.
I agree with everything our panelists have said. One thing I'm gonna add is for school and the provider to set a realistic expectations, right? I'm gonna talk from a career ready SYP perspective. When you are finalizing slot, you should definitely take into consideration how many interested and eligible youth you have, right? And in case if you are not able to get enough slot to career ready, there is other programming available this year. We are trying to serve 100,000. If we are not able to meet the demand through career ready SYP, there is always the regular SYP program available. So it's very important that we set a realistic expectation. And now that the career ready SYP program has been around for over 3 and 4 years, some schools actually know in terms of how they have done with the enrollment. And if you think you are going to need more slot, that's a conversation that needs to happen between school and provider. And based on that, whatever our providers are requesting this year, we've been very generous, right? And when it comes to career ready, just to put things into perspective, when the program was launched in 2019, we only had 4,000 students in the program, and we only had 53 schools. This year, we are going to have 20,000 students through Career Ready SYP program, and we are going to have over 200 schools, partner schools. So there is so much opportunities. We just need to make sure that we are directing our youth, our students to right program options.
Thank you. Next question is, what form of support is being offered by your organization in preparation for the program start date? And we can start again with you.
Perfect. Thank you. So in terms of support for ISP here over at Grant Associates, we work very closely with all school leadership, whether it be the work-based learning coordinator, principals, APs, what have you. And we work very closely with all of them and support all of them in a step-by-step basis. So we work closely with them and take recommendations in terms of which students to engage. We do reports in terms of which students have been engaging, regardless of whether they know or not. We give reports in terms of who all is actually applying, who all has their documents, who all has made it through the steps of the program. We interview the students ourselves as well, offer weekly reports to the coordinator so that everybody's in the loop. We match them as well. And essentially, we offer just very general and very close support in terms of making sure the students are eligible for the program, making sure we're on the same page as far as which students are being pushed forward, which students have or do not have their documents, as well as resources to getting those documents, and then pushing them through the program in terms of matching based on their industry, skill sets, and interests as well. So we work very closely throughout the entirety of the programming phase, so to speak, to make sure that the students are ready to start by program start.
Okay. Thank you, Matt.
Expand Ed is going to be supporting Career Ready through a accreditation pilot. So starting on, Taki is leading a large number of PDs for all Career Ready schools. And starting March 31st, we're going to be talking about a specific thing just related to Career Ready, where we're allowing schools to provide 1 credit and 105 hours of WBL towards the CDOS pathway this summer. So we're going to be providing support in terms of technical assistance, PD, curriculum support. Schools are going to be given per session hours to do the in-school curriculum. And it's really a great way for students to get a lot out of this summer. You know, in summer, we get 45 hours per credit. So it's a really nice way to take advantage of that. And 105 hours towards the CDOS meets almost half the requirement. So we can do a lot this summer with that pilot. If you do have a career ready allocation, I do encourage folks to join the March 31st meeting and then join the we're thinking 2 PDs after that in order to make this happen.
Thank you, Monia. Audrey?
Hi. We're preparing, we're supporting our populations from a several pronged approach. One of the things that we've started to do this year is to connect with Access VR to engage students in pre-employment training services. We offer those services to students in the evening in the 5 areas of transition. So they're really prepared for the world of work. We also once we get the applications, we review every student's IEP to find out what careers are they interested in. And we develop our work sites around those areas of student interest so that we can really be responsive to students and what their needs are and what they're looking at long term. And as was mentioned before, the goal of Summer Youth is to give the students an experience in the field of their interest, so they can say, I love this, I'm passionate about this work, I want to continue it. Or they can say, wow, I found out I really did not like this job. And that way students have the work-based learning experience they're working on. We support students by offering student-facing workshops on 21st century skills, by offering student workshops on self-advocacy, and our students learn how to have conversations with their supervisors and also invoking their own rights and responsibilities under the ADA in case they need an accommodation. So this is where they're beginning to have really good conversations about utilizing their work skills and their self-advocacy skills to make positive change for themselves and larger society in the future. Thank you.
Thanks, Audrey. And Narus?
Yes, on the DYCD side, as you guys know, we work with our providers to make SYP happen, right? After the SYP 2021, we actually hosted multiple focus group with our providers and also with some youth to see what support and what improvements we can make in preparation for SYP 2021. As a result of those series of focus group, as I mentioned earlier, there's no income verification requirement anymore. We have updated all the other documents requirement that we have in order for our providers, schools, and the students to understand how the enrollment process looks like. We are actually going to be releasing a new SYP toolkit next week, which is going to walk a providers and also school through different phases of SYP, right? Once they complete an applications, then they go through the enrollment process, then the placement process. There is also different forms and documents that we utilize different phases to ensure the program quality. So we have everything in one place through that SYP toolkit. There's just one thing we're doing on the resource side, right? In SYP, we also provide a host of training to our providers. As you know, last year was the first year when we launched Hats and Ladders Work Readiness platform. As part of that, we hosted numerous training to ensure that our providers understand what is the orientation requirement for younger youth? What is the orientation requirement for older youth? How can they successfully complete the orientation before they actually get started with their summer experience? we also work with our provider, work with our vendor who is responsible for the application side and also the payroll process. They provide extensive training to our providers in terms of how a students can complete an application, how a providers can enter an applications. They also cover the payroll process because that's a very important part. If our participants actually showing up to work on time, we want to make sure that they get paid on time, because we don't want to have a situation where our students work for a week and they don't get paid. And that's where the provider's responsibility come into play, making sure that those hours are entered and the supervisor are actually approving those hours. We are also going to be supporting our providers with worksite development. We are going to have some training in terms of how you can develop remote internships, how you can actually engage industry sectors that don't typically partner with SYP. So these are all the things that are happening on the DYCD side. We do want to make sure that our providers receive comprehensive support from DYCD to be as successful SYP providers, because if they are not operating successfully, then our program, our participants' experience is not going to be great. Our worksite experience is not going to be great. Our schools are not going to be happy. So we're going to make sure that they have the training and resources available to make SYP 2022 a successful year.
Thank you. Thank you, Narus. And I want to thank everyone from the panel for answering the questions. I know that we're almost out of time, but we wanted to open it up to anyone and anyone attending. If you have any questions that you'd like to ask any one of our panel members, please just unmute yourself. You could take a couple questions.
Well, I don't have a question, but I do want to thank DYCD for making the changes, because the parents' financial verification was such a huge hurdle and hurt us a lot. So thank you so much for listening and making that adjustment. You really helped us out a lot.
Of course, thank you. This is the first year actually we made significant changes to the participants document checklist.
Narus, you touched on something.
Larry, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. We're going to have to cut this section a little bit short, just because we still have one more presenter, and we're at 5. No, that's okay. I appreciate it. I know you want to go a little deeper, and we'll have access to Nurse. We'll have access to Monia. We're actually going to have, as I mentioned, the PD sessions that are going to be starting on the 17th, like specifically to support Career Ready. But then again, we will continue to have the WBL Institute and the coaching sessions. So for those of you who have additional questions, put them in the chat, and keep coming back. We will have our coaching sessions after this, week by week. Really quickly, before we lose time and lose folks, because I know you guys all have things to do, before we wrap, I wanted to give the floor to Mark Biondi, who is actually representing Love Michael, an organization that is actually working to provide service learning hours, another set of WBL activities that could be a part of your own planning if you're doing separate WBL, whether it's this spring or this summer. And I wanted to just make sure he had the ability to say a few words before we're starting to close for today. So please feel free to unmute yourself now, Mark.
Oh, thanks, Takia. Thanks so much. I'll be very brief, guys. I know it's the end of the day, but I'm Mark from Love Michael. We are a granola bakery headquartered in New York City, so we're local. We train, educate, and employ autistic adults. In 2020, we launched a volunteer program that's largely online, focused on really making our students advocates and allies to the autism community. We've built it into a full experience where it really will be no work on your part, but we would love the opportunity to make this available to your students. I'm going to just drop, Takia, a little link in the chat, if that's okay. If anybody would like more information, please just drop your email in there, and then I can connect with you and share a little bit more. I know it's a bit late, but we're really proud of this program. It's really helping to educate teenagers and have them actually advocate on behalf of the autism community. We've reached over 16,000 volunteers in 30 countries, and we're really excited. We'd love to make it available to your students. So thank you, guys. I won't take any more of your time, but let me just drop this quick link in the chat to everyone. And if you click that, just just give us your email and I'll follow up with you and we can talk a little bit deeper about it. I hope you guys have an amazing day and we would love to have some of your students participate. So thanks guys. Have an amazing night.
Thanks,
Appreciate your
Mark.
time.
I'm
Thanks,
so
Takia.
sorry we couldn't give you more time, but I did want to say
No,
that
no. Okay.
we continue to stress on the fact that the WBL grid also goes into detail as to all the other types of work-based learning that students could be gaining this summer. So not just internships and workplace challenges, but we also have the research projects. We also have, mentorship. We have obviously service learning. So we want to make sure that you are also tapping into the plethora of activities that you can actually use SIF funding to pay students for. So please don't forget that there are homegrown activities that you can provide between now and June, as also in the summer. And so with that, knowing that we're already 3 minutes over, I want to get quickly to the end here. Please put your emails through to Mark if you're interested to hear more, and he can present to your school specifically. I wanted to just circle back to the coaching that we're going to continue to provide on Wednesdays at 4. For those of you who are in between WBL Institute sessions, we usually have them the second week of the month. So the next one won't be coming around until April. But in between that time, we will have coaching. We will continue to support your individual questions in the interim around summer and other WBL. We want to make sure that you guys are here for the Reaching Everyone session, which is in April, and it will cover what have you left out? What other students need to be served that maybe aren't under the buckets of these 4 programs we talked about today? We want to make sure you're getting everybody and that most of your students are able to get to the 54 hours, if not already there. And then finally, in terms of the planning support, we talked about the Career Ready support series that is going to be kicking off on March 17th. You'll hear more about that on Monday, but we want to make sure that you guys are going to be getting your chops ready for Monia's session, for a session through UAU, which is United Activities Unlimited. They're also going to be doing a couple sessions on partnership and documentation. And then we're also going to hook up with the college and career planning team here under OPSR around connections to post-secondary as part of the summer, and you're thinking past the summer. So please stay tuned for that. And I will turn it back over to Larry for additional closeout. I think there's stuff going on in the chat too, but hopefully folks will be able to get their questions answered as well.
Thank you. Thank you, Takia. In the meantime, can you please just drop the survey link into the chat box for everyone before they leave? All of the session resources will be shared with you by the end of this week. This video will also be uploaded to our WBL Institute YouTube channel. And for all of our offerings through June, you can look at you can click the link for our WBL Institute calendar. All of this will be emailed to you. There is a Q code on the bottom right in the event that you can't click the link for our survey. And on behalf of myself, Desmond, Joe, and Takia, we thank you for attending. And if you need any more information, if you feel like you need more information, please feel free to contact us. Thanks, everyone, and have a good afternoon.